grueling truth. Steve, I'm excited to be back. I just have to yell to let you know we're back.
We're
The three of us,
back.
the three amigos, like it's like we never left. I left, and then you guys held it down. But we're back. It's the playoffs. My name is Ryan Peters. I'm joined by Steve Risley and Joe Spilman. This is the NASCAR show here on the Grueling Truth, but we're powered by betting.net. Betting.net is your best bet to find an online casino or sports book that's right for you. And if you've been doing that on the NFL like I have, then you're probably broke. Steve, you go into today without a loss as an Indianapolis Colts fan. How are you doing?
And without a win.
Glass half full.
At least we fired the wrong person. We punted our kicker. We should have punted our head coach. So, but anyway, this isn't football. So let's get into the meat of what's going on. We got a lot to talk about here in a short period of time.
Well, we got to say hi to Joe, who's probably miserable outside of his own coaching skills. But, Joe, how are you doing?
I am doing excellent, Ryan. I'm glad we're back. I thought maybe we were canceled. I got a pink slip in the mail from L.A. With the return address of Steve Risley on the top of it, and I thought he fired
anybody.
And I thought he fired all of us. They flew him out to corporate headquarters, and they, essentially said, if we don't step up our game, we're all fired. So we got to put on a hell of a show tonight, Ryan.
You cannot be fired if you've never been hired. So that's what I'm going.
That's corporate. That's Malta for you. These Malta.
You cannot be fired from a volunteer show. You just don't get a show link anymore.
Exactly. How are they going to fire us? What are they going to do?
So let's go ahead and dive in. It has been a lot of news in the NASCAR world. If you've been hiding under a rock for the past 6 months, one guy named Kyle Busch was a free agent, and that is no longer, as it's taking a very long time, more so than I think any of us could have imagined. And a lot of us, if we reflected back a year ago, said Kyle Busch is going to be a free agent, and I bet by the end of it, he's going to drive for Richard Childress Racing. We all three of us would have yelled and screamed at each other and said, we're all idiots. You guys don't know what you're talking about. But somehow, some way, Kyle Busch will be driving the number 8 car, and he will be teammates with Austin Dillon, and at least for one season, Tyler Reddick. Steve, you've now had another member leave Toyota to join the Bow Ties. How do you feel about Kyle Busch driving the number car for the foreseeable future?
I got the 9 car, and now I got the 8 car, and I'm doing fine. And JJ Yaley, after watching the Drive to Survive version on the 7 car, I got the 9, 8, and 7 covered for me. So I'm happy. I think it's a great move. I think that it's there's no perfect person for Kyle to go drive for at this point in his career, to just go be a wild gun than Richard Childress, because Childress obviously invented it with Dale Earnhardt Sr. And I think you're going to see some ruckus racing going on. I think he's going to let him have at it, boys. We see that in Austin Dillon. Austin Dillon's either first or last, mostly last, but occasionally first. But I think it's a great move, and I'm going to let you take the lead on this one, because I know Kyle's your boy, but as for me as a bow tie fan, and a NASCAR fan, I think it's a great move.
Well, I'm gonna pass the torch to Joe, so I'm gonna let you guys give your non-biased opinion versus the guy wearing this hat, and then I will give mine afterwards. So, Joe, what's your initial reactions with Kyle Busch joining the Chevrolets and driving the number 8 car for Richard Childress next year?
Well, I think when the news actually broke and was confirmed, I think I was stunned. I mean, you already said it. I don't think if we went back to the beginning of the season and we argued about where Kyle Busch would end up, I think we probably all would have said, or I think we actually all did say right here on this show, that our bets are on that he ends up back at JGR. And Ryan, you and I do a radio show that airs tomorrow night in our local area on Froggy 95.9. And I think we're going to talk about this topic a little bit. But, really where I'm at right now is, one, once you get past the disbelief and kind of being stunned that, okay, Kyle Busch is going to be driving a Chevrolet next year for RCR, and you start thinking about it, I think it's really good for the sport. I think that Kyle Busch picks up a whole bunch of fans that otherwise, as soon as last week or as far back as last week, were booing him. I think next year they're going to be cheering for him just simply because of the car he's driving. And I think that RCR realized that they don't really have a lot of talent, especially with Tyler Reddick leaving. And I think that they're probably all in on Kyle Busch, and he's going to be their race team, their franchise's driver. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, the first thing that I'll say is when it was officially announced, which, of course, in the day of social media, you pretty much know about it before the official announcement. So the way Kyle let it off was, this is the announcement of the announcement. But it was not a good taste in my mouth, because I think, number one, when it comes down to the level that Joe Gibbs Racing is compared to where Richard Childress Racing is, I think we obviously think that's a step down. I think first and foremost, when it comes to the equipment, Joe Gibbs Racing 1 through 4 is better than 1 through 2 equipment-wise than what Richard Childress Racing has been. So I think that is a step down. Now, what changes that is Chevy has been more advanced than Toyota in the next-gen car. I think that Richard Childress Racing, that gap is a lot smaller than what it would have been, say, last year with the last-gen car. So I think with the next-gen car, because so many of the parts, as we've talked multiple times, Steve, you alluded to this a ton, there are so many single-source parts coming to these cars now, that gap is now – oh, there's my announcement, by the way, too. This gap is getting smaller to where the upper echelon teams, like a team like Trackhouse, can all of a sudden become, a dominant force. But at the end of the day, what I come away with and what I hope the most is that we talked on this show, where does RCR go from here? We even made the thought that maybe Richard Childress just says, you know what, I don't want to be in this anymore. Or he just tries to hire, Ty Dillon, who lost his ride, and he just runs around with his grandsons and says, yeah, boys, just turn circles, try to get wins on super speedways. Other than that, let's just live a great life. But there was a fire that was put under the ass of Richard Childress when Tyler Reddick, he thought undeservedly, shunned him and joined 2311. And instead of saying, woe is me, he went out and got the greatest free agent probably since Dale Earnhardt Jr. And now you see two guys, Richard Childress with a fire under his ass and Kyle Busch with a fire under his ass, because he literally is leaving the 18 car so that Joe Gibbs' grandson can join it. Not because he's a two-time champion and, he's still not a good driver, but essentially so that Joe Gibbs can make a financial decision to get Ty Gibbs in that ride. And I think the best way this works out is if they say, I want to win a championship because what was done to me. And Richard Childress goes, you know what? Me too. I want to win a championship because I was screwed over by Tyler Reddick, who I thought I invested a lot into to get into this series. And I think that's the best case scenario. Now, do I think that it will come into fruition? I don't know. That's a big question mark. But I would rather see a motivated driver based on that than one that's not. And I hope that's where it goes. But I don't know. That's the part I don't know. And what's hilarious out of all this, we waited months and months. And the reason why Kyle Busch didn't sign back with Joe Gibbs is because he doesn't have a sponsor. And still don't have a sponsor, at least for the next couple of weeks until they announce it for the 8 car. Do you guys have anything more to add on to that? Steve, I'll go with you first.
Oh, I think they've got an idea of who their sponsor is going to be. I don't think that they would spend that kind of money to sign Kyle Busch.
Right.
I don't think Richard Childress is that wealthy. I think he's fine financially, but I don't think he's that wealthy to the point to where he wouldn't have a pretty good idea. And they're dotting the I's and crossing the T's on a sponsorship deal for him. And I'm not sure Kyle would go there if he didn't have one, because I know there's video of Kyle saying he's willing to make concessions to stay with JGR and take less money and they still didn't bite. that means JGR did not have a sponsor. It tells me, and they didn't want to foot the bill for the salary. And I think that Childress got something worked out, got it done. And I like I said, yeah, I think this was a thing that's been probably going on longer than we thought it was going on between these two.
Well, let me ask you this, Steve, and I posed this question to Joe off air. Who do you think? Do you think there's a short-term winner and long-term winner? Because the way I think about it is this way: is Toyota just lost its greatest driver of all time. That's undeniable. They lost a guy that almost put 200 wins purely in the Toyota. He is Toyota Racing, and that's now gone. He's their only champion. You know, Martin Truex Jr. didn't win with Joe Gibbs Racing. He won with, the Furniture Row Racing. So now you lose that.
In a Chevrolet.
Yes, you lose that. You also lose Kyle Busch Motorsports because that's turning into Chevy. So now you lose your development program. Chevy has already, in my opinion, been a greater manufacturer with the next-gen car than Toyota, and now you possibly lose, or not possibly, now you lose Kyle Busch, and now you lose your young driver system in Kyle Busch Motorsports. Do you think, because of where Joe Gibbs Racing was before, outside of just having Tony Stewart and one really good year with Bobby Labonte, that this could possibly put Joe Gibbs Racing back to a mid-tier level program? Or do you think that they'll be just fine and do okay with Ty Gibbs?
That's a great question, Ryan. That's really a very good question because really, other than Kyle, nobody's won a championship over at JGR, have they? I mean, Hamlin's not won one.
Tony Stewart and Bobby Labonte won when they were Pontiacs, but nobody in the Toyota, no.
Nobody in the Toyota has won one other than, and I think right now Kyle's got 2 more championships in him. I mean, I really think he does. I think he's got a fire in his belly now that he's going to just go after Toyota. So, and I did see today that the Toyota director of racing development came out and said the drivers that were driving for Kyle Busch Motorsports belong to Toyota. They were funded entirely by Toyota, so they will stay with Toyota. So now Kyle's going to have to retool his new Chevy team and find new drivers to drive his trucks, and Chevy will help him, I'm sure, develop those drivers. I'm sure Hendrick's going to get in and give them a hand too if they need to, because they want to keep the bow tie out front, as said. So it's a real dynamic, but I don't know. I just see it as, how am I trying to word this rightly? I don't know. I think it's going to be fine for everybody. I think Kyle Busch is going to land on his feet. I think Childress and Kyle are going to team up well. They've got very similar personalities from what we know of them. I mean, I've never met either one of them. I know you spent some time with Kyle Busch, but I think their personalities are going to match. They're going to click. And like you said earlier in this show, they both have a belly in their fire in their belly now to go shove it up somebody's rear end. And that may start with a T and end with an A.
Well, Joe, I'll ask you. I mean, because I just look at this.
TNA, I got it.
I just
made a joke and
I was
going
to let it slide. Yes. I feel like this is the ultimate way to set up the future of Chevy. Not just getting Kyle Busch, but getting Kyle Busch Motorsports. I think that at the end of the day, when we look back 5 years from now to see the drivers that have went through Kyle Busch Motorsports entering, their professional careers at their truck series, I think that's even a bigger get for Chevy and a huge loss for Toyota, because if you look at it right now, Joe, you have Martin Truex, who's going to be gone. I mean, very soon. But we all thought he was going to be gone next year. He's going to be gone in at least 2 years. Denny Hamlin's not going to get any younger. Kurt Busch, we don't know if he'll ever drive again. So you got Bubba Wallace, who will be 30 next year, and then you got Tyler Reddick and then Ty Gibbs. That's it. And now you look at what Chevy's getting, and they got arguably the best truck system, at least in terms of equipment. I just think this is such a huge get for Chevy moving forward and such a huge loss for Toyota, not just as Kyle Busch, the driver, but what he provides to the sport in the younger series. Joe, what do you say?
No, I think you're absolutely right, and there's really no more point to drive home than that. Is this is a huge pickup by Chevrolet, and really, Steve, to your point, those drivers may have been funded by Toyota and developed by Toyota, but Kyle Busch Motorsports is not going to have any problem finding a talented driver to
Yeah,
fill
I agree.
seats. So and I think really in a sport like NASCAR, which I know some people argue about the validity of the sport, but it's really who's spending the most money and who's putting the infrastructure into the drivers to develop them to get them to the next series. And if you have somebody that owns a team like Kyle Busch, that not only can give you some leadership and really coach these drivers and pass along his knowledge, you also have the funding, and he's going to have funding through Chevrolet to fund this team. So I think really this is a gigantic turn of the tides, as far as Chevrolet just absolutely dominating this sport for years to come.
Well,
Yeah,
Joe,
I mean,
let me
go
say
ahead.
this. Let's not forget, too, that Chevrolet also owns or is in cahoots with JR Motorsports, which pretty well dominates the Xfinity series.
Right.
Yeah, and they just got Brandon Jones, who left Joe Gibbs
Yeah,
Racing today too, to go to Junior
Yeah.
Motorsports.
So you've got probably the best feeder system in all of minor league, all feeding into Chevrolet camps. Whether it be Stuart Haas, whether it be Hendrick, whether it be Richard Childress now, whether it be who's the new one, Trackhouse.
Yeah.
Now you're looking all of a sudden, everybody's going like, holy cow. Look what they just done. They locked up the truck series now by getting KBM. They've already had Junior Motorsports. They've got Hendrick. They've got Childress. They've got all these other teams we've already mentioned. And yeah, if I was another manufacturer coming here right now and say, this was a much bigger move than we thought it was going to be by letting him go.
Yep.
Oh, I think it's huge.
Yeah, it's massive.
Yeah. I mean, when you go to a racetrack, there's only two haulers that represent one driver, Chase Elliott and Kyle Busch. And now those two drivers are going to be driving for the same manufacturer. And I think if the pressure on Ty Gibbs now, based on the ramifications, at least to me, moving forward, just exponential. I think if this would have fell out to where Kyle Busch went to 23-11 or somehow was able to stay, maybe just on a year-to-year basis or something of that nature. But now we saw Ty Gibbs come up, drive, and then to me, what you're talking about, Steve, they're like, yeah, Kyle, we don't care if you're willing to take concessions or not because Ty Gibbs is going to drive the 18 next year.
Yeah.
And I think they just rescinded their offer, and now the expectations for Ty Gibbs, they're huge because it's not just Ty Gibbs having to supplant Kyle Busch, the winningest driver in Toyota. Now you also lost the feeder system. So, and we'll sum it up this way. The career of Kyle Busch started at Hendrick Motorsports, where he was pushed out so Dale Earnhardt Jr. could get a ride. That fan base hated each other because Kyle Busch wrecked Dale Earnhardt Jr. at Richmond. They since have become friends and talk to each other. Richard Childress Racing and Richard Childress and Kyle Busch also infamously got into it. Those have all sowed, and at the end of Kyle Busch's career, he will now drive Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s number 8 car around the track. So life has come full circle for Mr. Busch.
I almost think that a good analogy is, if you remember the movie from a long time ago, the beginning of the movie Days of Thunder, when Cole Trickle first got in the car and they were banging the crap out of him they were knocking him silly and they were pulling him out of the car and they were eating ice cream in the stands because then, they finally said, hey, when you go back out there, I want you to hit the pace car. Why the pace car? You hit every other damn thing on the track. You might as well hit that too. And I'm thinking that's kind of what Ty Gibbs is in for now. I mean, yeah, I think he's in for not going to be as successful a season as I think Joe Gibbs thinks he's going to have. I don't think so. I think there's a lot to learn in that sport. And you look at Bubba Wallace as a great example now, who's just now starting to even learn how to drive these cars, on anything but a
At
super
30 years
speedway.
old.
Yeah, at 30 years old. So, and there's a long way to go. But the establishment of KBM, the establishment of Junior Motorsports, and all these other major Cup teams, yeah, Chevy's got to be. They're singing a song and dance in Detroit right now. I'm thinking they're pretty happy about themselves,
That
and
they absolutely.
I'll bet they helped fund Kyle's salary too. I'm sure.
I think that the people that got on the phone with that, Steve, when this was a possible reality, they probably couldn't get to it fast enough. And
Right.
it's a reality that none of us thought was possible. I mean, we talk about betting.net. I couldn't imagine the odds of Kyle Busch to join RCR Racing whenever it was announced that, that he was going to be a free agent. But let's move on to.
Well, hang on. Let me ask you one question, Ryan, before we
Go
move on. Is there any downside to this for Kyle Busch?
Yeah, he's in worse equipment.
No, he's not.
I don't think he is. I don't think Richard Childress is as good at drivers. You can't tell me that Chevy doesn't make Hendrick share the information with Childress and everybody. And I just think that the drivers that he's had have not been up to snuff for what Childress has got 7 Winston Cup championships under his belt.
With 6, one driver actually, that hasn't been there for 25 years.
Yeah.
Well, Ryan, I'll say this. I don't think RCR is as they don't have as well as put together race team as JGR right now. But I will say, as far as equipment goes, I think RCR can get right back there with JGR, and Chevrolet can get right back there. I think that I agree with Steve that they haven't had. I mean, they've had Tyler Reddick, and outside of that, any wins that they get outside of Tyler Reddick or any great performance has, let's be honest, it's been luck, and it's been on super speedways. So I don't really buy the equipment argument, but at the end of the day, I think JGR is a better race team. I think Kyle Busch is moving to backward in the direction of performance as far as race team, but I think that RCR could pour some money into this and build an infrastructure to where they're a top tier team moving into next year.
Who builds Childress's engines?
I don't know.
Does he build his own?
Like I said, I'm not sure who does that, but I mean, we were the same people that said we didn't think RCR was going to have possibly not even be an organization after losing Tyler Reddick. We wouldn't have said that if we thought they were a top flight organization. Kevin Harvick left to go win a championship. That's what it took for Kevin Harvick to win a championship, was to leave and go to Stewart-Haas Racing. And it's a step down on every aspect of it. And I think that's the downside. I think that the gap, like I said earlier, is a lot smaller with the next gen car to where they could be a track house or even better moving forward with the talents of someone like Kyle Busch and having Tyler Reddick next year and having Austin Dillon, if they're able to learn off of Kyle Busch or vice versa. Maybe Tyler Reddick has learned something that Kyle Busch doesn't know. And, I think that team has a chance to be a contender immediately. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that Tyler Reddick thought could do really well in these playoffs, but I mean, he's won on 2 road courses and Austin Dillon won at Daytona, and those are the least amount of tracks that we have on the schedule. And they're not out there dominating mile and a half. Now, Tyler Reddick probably should, but then again, you go back to the pit crew, you go back to all these different things, that's why he hasn't. So, I mean, I think that's clearly the downside. but I think that gap is smaller than it's ever been in NASCAR from a top flight organization to a mid flight. That being said, I could see Joe Gibbs Racing in 3 years being middle of the pack based on everything we talked about. If it doesn't work out for Ty Gibbs, they will be.
Yeah.
That's just all there is to it. So
Yeah.
we've waited 6 months for Kyle Busch to choose a manufacturer and a new car. We have it. That's why we spent 25 minutes on it. But something that excited me that was announced is that North Wilkesboro and the magic of Dale Earnhardt Jr. has now secured the All-Star race. Thank God it's moving from Texas. I don't care if they did it in Joe's backyard. It will not be at Texas next year. It will be at North Wilkesboro. And we mentioned, what could NASCAR do to make the All-Star race more enjoyable? Was it Charlotte? That's kind of like in the, down in the roots of NASCAR, of course, North Carolina, where they're going back, but it won't be at Charlotte. It'll be at North Wilkesboro, who has done nothing but sell out. Dale Earnhardt Jr. says they're going to keep the same pavement. It's going to be the same speedway that it's been before. So are you guys excited to see NASCAR revive one of its old tracks that hasn't raced on in over 2 decades and now head to North Wilkesboro next year, at least this time for an exhibition race? Joe, I'll start with you.
No, I'm really excited to see racing back at North Wilkesboro. I think Steve made a comment off air and before we started the show, because we talked about this a little bit, and I agree with what you said when we were off air, Steve, which was you don't think that it has the infrastructure or the seating to host an event like that, and I think you may be right, but I think it will be a good event, and I'm excited to see it there. I think the nostalgia of going back racing at North Wilkesboro will far outweigh any of the negatives that anybody can conjure up.
Steve, how do you feel about a track that you got to see
know,
race? I wasn't alive the last time they raced there.
I remember it vaguely, but it was such a long time ago that, it was the infancy of really getting involved. But my question is, didn't they already put tickets on sale and isn't it already sold out?
No.
Yeah,
So what you had to do, and this is, take this from a guy that tried.
Okay, you did it. That's right. Explain this to people.
Okay, so what they wanted you to do is you had to donate $25 to Speedway charities, and that puts you on a list for priority, which, donating to charity, that's fine. First 1,000 people that did it. So they first tried it. The website couldn't handle it. So then they said, well, instead of 10 o'clock, let's come back at 3. People tried for an hour and a half. And from what I can tell, 99% of people don't know if they're going to end up getting priority or not. And it's not went on sale to the public yet. But let's just hope that they're not using the same website that was possibly the last time North Wilkesboro ran a NASCAR race, maybe the same website they try to use to sell tickets. So hopefully that goes a lot smoother. But I mean, the demand you're going to talk about in this race.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you? We're talking less than 30,000 seats, right? I mean, isn't it just close to 20,000 seats for this?
I thought when didn't they do a remodel and add another section of bleachers there?
They added 17,000 seats, but like it's not a big track. It's really small.
Yeah.
So, which I mean, demand is a good thing. I mean, you want demand. To me, you want this to be a hot ticket, because I think if you're able to do this grassroots movement, like I said that NASCAR should do, I think they should go more to these smaller tracks because it's an exhibition race. Like I feel like this is a good thing. I don't think it's a good thing for people to wait an hour and a half to find out whether or not they got in. And even the people that do don't know what the hell's going on. But let's just get back to the racing. Steve, what do you feel about NASCAR going back to North Wilkesboro as an idea altogether?
For an all-star race, I'm fine with it. I mean, it's an exhibition. It's not a points race. It's not anything that's going to screw up anybody's season or anything like that, or or give somebody an unfair win. No, there's no unfair win. Whenever you win, and that's the way it is. But it's more positive than negative. So I'm fine with it. I think it's cool that they're going back to the roots. It's the 75th anniversary of NASCAR.
Yep.
And it's a good thing. There's no reason to be down on it right now.
Yeah, I think it has a chance to be a TV spectacle for NASCAR, like we know Daytona is. I think if they tied in the 75th anniversary, brought back some of the all-time greats to North Wilkesboro that's run on that track, maybe get to drive a lap around in the car that they won in. That's just something that NASCAR could do to make this be an awesome event. And like you said, Steve, it's an exhibition race. At the end of
Hey,
the day, go ahead.
go ahead. No, you finish.
I said at the end of the day, we want the racing to be good. We know it's probably going to be better in Texas because there's no way it could be worse.
Yeah.
This is the perfect test. This is the perfect trial, is a race that essentially means nothing besides for money. And then at the end of it, if it's a huge hit, then it's just simply, well, yeah, now we're going to do it on the schedule.
We'll put them on schedule. Yeah. And it's, to me, I was going to say, I live out here in LA. I thought the Coliseum was going to be a joke.
Right.
And
Same.
it actually turned out to be not too bad.
It's
I
pretty
mean, I
fun.
still think it's awful small track to be running those cars on, but God, they put 70 some odd thousand people in the Coliseum, and I mean it was a massive party out here in LA for that. Surprised the heck out of me that many people in LA gave a damn about NASCAR. But so who am I to question whether it's right or wrong? You know, North Wilkesboro is a just an iconic track in the history of the sport, and so go for it. It's an exhibition, like I said. It's an all-star. Go paint schemes. You do your paint schemes again. Like I said, great idea. Put Yarborough and Petty and all those guys in their old iconic cars and let them parade around.
Yeah.
And maybe put Briggs and Stratton 5 horsepower engines in them and let them go, let them go around at
Yeah.
that speed and
Yeah.
have a
Everybody will
lawnmower,
be asking,
or
dear God, who opened a lawnmower shop back here? Jesus.
or get John Deere to sponsor the Legends race, and like I said, paint all the John Deere tractors like their cars, and give them 14 horsepower Briggs and Strattons. They might be able to handle that. But
Yeah.
no, it's a good thing. It's good.
I
NASCAR's
think,
going in they're going in the right direction.
yeah, we've seen a lot of moves where it came down to one thing, and that's money and reaching different markets. That was the LA Coliseum, which I'm fine with an exhibition.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in my opinion, that's what we see in the Chicago street race. It's nice to see some fan service that doesn't require a huge amount of money as the sole reason why they made that move. They're probably not going to make a lot of money at North Wilkesboro, but at the end of the day, the people that love NASCAR and love auto racing, I think, are going to be tuning in because this is something that replicates why they got into racing. Same thing with the dirt race. There's not a lot of people that think that it's going to possibly be the greatest thing in racing, but it helps them kind of reach back to the roots of racing, which is racing on dirt. And it's been a huge thing for people to tune in at. So
yeah, well, the only thing I'll say to that is talk to me after I try and buy a parking spot for the RV I don't own yet, to go to North Wilkesboro to park in the lot to go down there for the weekend. I'm sure that parking spot's going to be, oh my goodness.
I think my good pastor will probably helicopter you in, Steve. So you don't even have to worry about that.
But he actually told me that they're working on the logistics of getting you a helicopter.
Hey, I don't fly on helicopters anymore.
At least out of LA, so you could beat the traffic.
Nope, I don't get on helicopters out of LA.
Well, let's dive into the playoffs. It's been an interesting year. We now have I think we're at 18 different drivers now have won in the NASCAR series. It's the most in one season, and we still have plenty of racing left to go.
Have we ever had the first 2 playoff races not won by a playoff driver?
No, we never had the first one not run by a playoff driver, let alone the first 2.
The first 2. Go ahead and talk to that. Yeah,
and this kind of what I was getting ready to talk to you about, Steve, is that I was waiting to see which driver would take the playoffs by the horns, and the answer is nobody. It's been more about who's not screwing up versus who's dominating. So what have you seen through 2 rounds of the playoffs, Steve, that have caught your eye and that have interested you, with Eric Jones and Bubba Wallace being the two winners to begin the playoffs?
I mean, I'll just state the obvious and let you guys break it down. The next gen car. I mean, it's the next gen car. It just brings fair balance into the racing, and now you've got guys like Eric Jones who are capable drivers. I don't want to take anything away from those guys, and Bubba, who's, as we talked earlier in this show, becoming a qualified, bona fide, legitimate NASCAR driver. But the equality of this car, regardless of what manufacturer you have on tape to the front of your hood, and the aero packages they're putting on these cars, is just making it so much more fun to watch. And there's no clear-cut guaranteed winners anymore. We all thought Chase Elliott was going to run away with this thing the last week of the season, and now he's he's going to be okay in the round of 12. But I'm going to tell you what, he don't want to get too much. He don't want to have another bad race, or his butt's going to be sitting out watching, right along with some other guys pretty quickly. So I think it's the car. That's the first thing I'll come to, more than anything else. What do you guys think?
Go ahead, Joe.
Well, I agree with I think that we've seen that all season. We've talked about it a whole bunch on this show, that the next gen car could potentially be, or is, the great equalizer in this sport right now, at least. And one thing that I want to mention is I feel like in years past, when we got to the playoffs, that the drivers that weren't competing for a championship kind of just went out there and ran laps. And over the last two races, I mean, every driver in the field's competing for a win. And I think that, and I could be wrong on that, but I just feel like there's kind of a different atmosphere and momentum around these races, that drivers are still trying to prove themselves and get a win. And I think that really throws a wrench into the, how intricate winning one of these races can be, and how many obstacles you can come over, because I'm not seeing guys just get low on the track and get out of the way of people that are competing. They're wanting to win as well. They're wanting to get their laps back. They're not wanting to go a lap down. So, everybody's still out there racing and competing. And I think that's what NASCAR intended when they set up the playoffs. And I think that's how it should be run. I think every driver, no matter whether or not they're competing for a championship or not, needs to compete every week for a win. And I applaud the non-championship teams right now for going out and still trying to put together winning races and racing hard.
Yeah, well, I think.
Let me just say this, then I'll turn it over to you. I think two things I wrote down while you were talking, Joe. Generational change. I think we're seeing a lot of young drivers making a generational change. A lot of the older guys kind of starting to fade back into the upper limelight, and new young drivers, the same thing, being aggressive and saying, "The hell with this, good old cowboy theory. I'm out here to win. I don't care if I'm blocking you or I'm running with you. I don't care if you're going for the playoffs and I'm not. I'm going to try and win this race." And now for two out of two, it's happened. So, Ryan, your thoughts?
The thing that surprises me is that not only to even expand your point, Joe, I think typically by this point we knew who the 5 best drivers in NASCAR were. We were wondering which one was not going to make it to the Final Four by this point in the season in years past. I have no idea who's going to make it to the next round, or who's going to. This is powered by betting.net. I would put my money on nobody. I mean, right now, Christopher Bell's winning it. I mean, right. He's leading the points. Like you mentioned, Steve, halfway into the first round of the playoffs, it looked like a complete disaster for Hendrick Motorsports. Yeah. Chase Elliott out early, spins himself out, breaks a tie rod. Kyle Larson possibly blowing up. William Byron possibly blowing up. Martin Truex does blow up, and then Kyle Busch follows in favor. And it's like it literally changes every 10 laps at certain times during these races, let alone round to round. And to your point, Joe, it's the reason they're able to do that is because you're right. It used to, if you didn't have a yellow sticker on the top of your car, on the front windshield, or on the back wing, you just got the hell out of the way. You're just phoning it in. These teams are the best. We don't really have a chance to compete. We try to get into the playoffs, maybe earn a little bit of extra money for our sponsors that way. That's not the case. You got just as good a shot winning with this car as the guy that entered Chase Elliott into the standings in first place and was the regular season champion. And we're seeing that. And, it's a crazy thing. I mean, we're probably going to have another first-time winner. Martin Truex at this point is going to win a race. I'm more convinced now than ever. If Eric Jones and Bubba Wallace are going to go into victory lane, then maybe Martin Truex plays spoiler. And maybe every single round we have somebody not take that extra step and secure their way into the playoffs. And that just makes it more fun for us. I want these races to come down to points. I don't want 3 guys automatically in and these other guys fine. I want every single pit road mistake. Oh shit, who's winning the points now? Who's kicked out? Who's not? It's changed. It's like watching the stock market. This guy's up by 7 points. Oh shit, he just blew a tire. Boom, now he's here. And it's like that on every single race, and it's probably going to be like that every single round. What NASCAR's created with this next-gen car, and hopefully the safety issues get worked out. We don't want that, and we've seen that. And Kevin Harvick's been not so quiet about the NASCAR safety issues with his car randomly catching on fire. But what it's done outside of that has made this the greatest season. I mean, it to me, bar none, there is no favorite. Anybody can win at any single time. And it's just been a great journey to watch this, because I feel like the way people are going to know this car, we may never see this again. More than likely, odds would say we will never see this type of racing again. And who's the favorite to win Bristol this week? I don't know. Get out of here, Fly.
I have no idea. I mean, I almost listened to 3 of us talk. I almost like it as the fact that in the playoffs, take away the automatic win and you move on to the next round to earn your points. Show up every race and earn your points now.
Well,
the hell with the automatic win. I mean, but it does give somebody using the bottom 4 right now as legitimate a chance as Christopher Bell to move on to the next round.
And I'll pick the guy that's last in points. I'm going to pick Kevin Harvick this week. I mean, he should have won it. He had a chance to win it last year.
Chase took care of that.
Right. And maybe that beef's settled and he has a better chance this time. But to that point, Steve, I'm going to pick Kevin Harvick this week. Joe, you got any thoughts moving on to Bristol?
Well, no, I'm just going to say, I don't totally agree with the fact that you take away a win and you're in, because that really sets up just like Kevin Harvick wins this week. He may not move on in points, but if he wins this week, you put emphasis on winning. And I think that is one of the best things NASCAR has done in the history of the sport, is say, we are going to put this much emphasis on winning. And in the playoffs, it's even more highlighted because you have 16 drivers right now, and Kevin Harvick's 16th. But if he wins at Bristol this weekend, he's moving on to the next round. And I think that's great.
I agree with you, Joe, to the largest degree, except for the fact that how fun is it going to be Saturday night to sit and watch Bristol, knowing all 16 drivers have a chance to move on.
Oh no, that's great.
And there's not 2 spots already locked up.
No, that's great.
We're only going to get 2 drivers. 2 drivers are automatically going to be eliminated. Right now, every single driver's got the shot to move on.
Mathematically, 15 drivers have a chance to be eliminated. The only one that's secure for the next round is Christopher Bell. He has 60-plus points to the good. Outside of that, the guy in last place has just as good a shot to advance, to the guy in second place has just as good a shot to get eliminated.
And where are they racing?
Bristol, baby.
It's Bristol, baby. So,
that guy in second place might be out.
Track.
Yeah.
Because come the last 100 laps, there's going to be some desperate drivers driving around on that track. And
some of those desperate drivers might be out in the second on the second or third lap. So
yeah, they might. Just keep Austin Dillon away from him.
Keep Kyle Busch out of your mouth, Joe.
I didn't say anything.
And
One
Cody
thing has
Ware.
been consistent. Kyle Busch will wreck himself. He don't need any help this year, so it'll probably be Kyle Busch. But let's go ahead and move on to our picks. Joe, I know you have been some coaching and yelling at the football screen, so you don't have it tallied up.
Right.
But
I will
you
say,
can
I think Ryan ran away with it this week.
yeah, I don't have the points tallied up, but it is bar none. Ryan's leading by at least 6 points, I think.
Oh, at
because
least.
I chose who?
Bubba.
Bubba. Because Steve, you and I have kind of shit the bed on the first 2 races of the season.
Yep,
We didn't get
we
very
have.
many points the last 2 weeks, and I think Ryan may have been. I think he may have got the highest point total of any picks that we have done all season. I think you're like at 15 points last week.
This could be
it's
the greatest
insane.
comeback of all time.
It's kind of like
yeah.
this season. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just been nuts. But that being said, I have no idea who to pick for this race. I mean, short tracks have been, we don't know what to expect. Last time we saw like a true short track, it wasn't very good. I mean, I don't count Richmond as a short track. It's kind of both. It's 0.75 miles. But I mean, if you go all the way back, it's been Martinsville as our true short track, and it sucked. So, and then when we were at Bristol, there was dirt on the surface. Now there's obviously not going to be dirt there. So I'm going to give it to whoever wants to go first.
I'll go first. All
right,
first.
there you go, Steve.
Of course you'll go first. It's not the last race of the season.
Damn, Joe.
Go ahead, Steve.
I said your wife roses every week. What the hell?
Yeah. She said, "Stop it. You're making her feel a little uncomfortable."
She didn't say shit. Joe said stop it because now he's trying to compete.
Yeah, exactly.
My wife is an IU alumnus. You can't be sending her flowers. It's going to cost
Well,
me
I'm
a whole
working
bunch
on
of
getting
money.
her courtside tickets to the IU Purdue game, but she can't take you.
Oh man. Well, she doesn't have to take me.
She's got to take
her-
Ryan.
Yeah, she'll take Ryan.
I'll
She can
be
take
there.
her mom. Her mom's an IU fan too.
I'll be there in a heartbeat.
I'm going with my homeboy, and that is
I'm waiting on you.
Chase
Just go
Elliott.
ahead. Okay,
going with Elliott. I think he's hell bent for everything this week now because the weight is off his shoulders big time. I'm going with Kyle Busch in a heartbeat. Are you kidding me? That guy's going to just go out and drive like a bat out of hell. He's not going to care anymore. And
I've been hoping that for 6 months.
Yeah, well, I think it's going to happen. Logano is dirty, sneaky, just like Niedermeyer on this kind of track. So I got to go with my boy Logano. Larson runs the high groove as good as anybody in the world. And this is a high groove track. You want to be up top up there until you get your speed, get up front. Then you want to dive low to protect yourself. And I'm still I'm torn between my last one between Blaney and Truex. But I'm going to go with Blaney. I still think Blaney's got a win in him, and I think Truex does too. I just think that it's not at this track, and I'm going to go with Blaney. So I got Blaney, Larson, Logano, Busch, and Elliott.
I don't think
and
that's
Elliott's
bad.
not going to win. He's going to play safe, protect his points.
If you can play safe at Bristol,
if you can.
It takes one turn for 20 cars to hit each other.
Well, hell, how many years has he been in the lead and somebody's bumped him out? Yeah, crap. He should have 4 wins at Bristol by now.
Joe, you and your infinite wisdom's up next.
I'm going to go with Chase Briscoe, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Kyle Busch, and I'm going to go with Kevin Harvick this week as well.
I did not have the balls to say Chase Briscoe, but I actually thought about saying Chase Briscoe. So I'm glad you took him because if he ends up doing really well, that'll be fun. So I'm going to go the guy that should have won in the spring, Tyler Reddick, before being wrecked by Chase Briscoe. I'm going to go Kyle Busch because he is the Bristol king. I mean, he is really, really good at Bristol. For God's sakes, if he was going to win anywhere, it should be Bristol. Then I'm going to go Kevin Harvick, Chase Elliott, and this is where I want to go. I'll probably just go with the guy that's been the most consistent for JGR, and I'm going to go Christopher Bell. I feel like he's been knocking on the door to get a win. He just hasn't got another win yet. So I'm going to go Christopher Bell. So Kyle Busch, Christopher Bell, Kevin Harvick, and Tyler Reddick.
Yeah, the only thing those are great picks. The only thing I say is all the young guns that you're picking and everybody's picking, it's awful easy to get dumped on this track. You know, a little tap on that fender and you're spinning backwards into the wall. And it takes a veteran to know how to block right, how to protect yourself. And like I said, I saw it happen to Chase multiple times when he was a younger driver coming up through here, and he was leading Bristol late in the race, and either Hamlin got him or Harvick got him or somebody tagged him and took him out. And I think that this is a veteran's track just because you got to know how to protect yourself at this track is the only thing I say differently.
Joe, you have any final thoughts?
No, I agree with that, Steve. However, we saw out of the next-gen car, especially on the short tracks, that it takes a lot more abuse. And I'll say one thing about Chase Briscoe. He's done, I thought, very well on short tracks this year thus far.
Yeah.
It was some good runs, and he's been right there. So,
no, it's a crapshoot.
I like to pick them dirt guys. So,
yep.
I think short track does the best for Ford. I think that's where they're the most competitive, and that's why it's easier for me to pick Kevin Harvick, and I think that's why you're able to pick Kevin Harvick and Chase Briscoe, because I feel like that's where the equalizer's been for Ford, has been on these short tracks. Well, gentlemen, this race is on Saturday night. Hopefully everything is back in the swing. I am in the Hoosier State, and maybe we can plan on doing a post-race show Saturday night, if that's all right for the two of you.
I'm home.
I could probably do that.
It's Saturday afternoon for me. Remember, I'm in 3 hours behind.
It's Bristol, baby. We got to do one.
I won't even get to watch it at night, even though it'll be at night.
Well, that's going to do it for us here. This is the NASCAR show on the Grueling Truth. We're powered by betting.net. Betting.net's your best bet for getting a online casino or sportsbook that's right for you. The gang's back together, and now we part ways. For Joe Spilman, Steve Risley, I'm Ryan Peters. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time.